Hi everyone, this is a short presentation on cohesive devices for the Academic English 20 program. Well, first of all, we have to introduce what cohesive devices are. Well, they make your writing a little bit more connected, more coherent, and more consistent. Let's have a look at what I mean. Well, first of all, how do we make our writing more cohesive is a question that we are going to try to answer in this presentation. If you think of writing that is not so good, it can be a little bit like being stuck in traffic. It's very stop-start. One idea starts, you run with it, and then you stop, and maybe you go again. It can be quite difficult to read. What cohesive devices and cohesive writing does is it makes our writing a little bit more like a river. It flows a little bit more. Okay, so we don't want it to be stop-start. We want it to flow through the drafts. Okay, so let's look at some ways to do this. One way that we can make our writing flow is by repeating keywords. So, for example, if your paper is about, protecting the environment, that might be there might be some keywords that you repeat through the paper. If it's about persuading others or having an impact, you're going to see this quite a few times through the paper. But we don't want to just repeat the keywords. We also want to use synonyms or synonymous words. For example, if we use persuade, we can change that to convince, win over, change their mind. It's good to vary language to prevent the reader getting bored. And aside from pronouns, we can also use, aside from synonyms, we can also use pronouns. So, for example, if we're talking about behaving sustainably, we don't want to say behaving sustainably 4 or 5 times in a paragraph. Instead, we can say doing this or it. And another way to make our writing flow is transition words. Let's have a little look at those transition words a little bit later. First, we have logical bridges. Let's look at keywords and synonyms and pronouns. So, whatever the controlling idea or the subject of the paragraph is, this should be very clear to the reader. This is an example of a paragraph where the theme is very clear just from glancing at the piece of writing. So we have students, another word for that might be undergraduates, another word for that might be people, and we know the theme is going to be about working out, gyms, sports, exercise, and we also have a few pronouns thrown in there as well with they and this. So really there's 2 main subjects that are dealt with here, students and exercise, but we can see this is this runs through the paragraph, but we don't just use those words, we use other terms, we use synonyms to vary our language a little bit, and this creates more coherence within the passage and cohesion. Another way to do it is with transitions. You've probably learnt these before, things like in addition, however, for example, eventually, and we use these in a paragraph, usually at the start of sentences, and they're followed by a comma. If they're in the middle of a sentence, just use a semicolon and then a comma after the transition. These can just link ideas together. So, for example, my favorite subject is history. I am majoring in math. We'll need a transition that shows contrast here. Okay, so something like nevertheless, even so, however, the 3 of these will show contrast between 2 ideas. Alternatively, she won a scholarship to Berkeley. She is an accomplished concert pianist. This is adding information, so we can use furthermore, in addition, or what's more. And adding these into your paragraphs increases the flow from one sentence to another. Another way that we can do this is we can look at how we finish and we start sentences. So when you start a sentence, look back at the sentence before. Okay, try to give context to the idea. Don't just drop the sentence in. Always look back at what you've said before and try to knit and link everything up together. For example, this quote shows that doing an activity together usually means we are with people who have similar interests. And the next sentence, having something in common. So similar interests and having something in common kind of like knit together, and they create a real cohesion within the paragraph. So it's a good idea before you start a sentence just to reread the end of the last sentence to see where you are. And this is the same with sentence endings. When we get towards the end of a sentence, we can often offer something new or give the more important ideas at the end once we've knitted the idea together. So for example, here this is a good chance for people working out to chat and interact with each other, deepening their friendship. Okay, and then we move on to the next one and we can expand on this idea of relationships and lifelong friends. Okay, so very often the more important ideas will go towards the end of a sentence once we've linked the sentence in. Okay, now with cohesive devices, there are numerous cohesive devices in your Knowing Language book, and you can see them here. Okay, we have repetition, synonyms, antonyms, pronouns, articles, demonstrative adjectives, demonstrative pronouns, and so on. There are even more in there. What we're going to do now is just look at how we could use these. So the examples are on the left, and the terms themselves are on the right. All I'd like you to do is to match them together. As we can see, the first one will not be open, remain closed. These are antonyms, okay, the opposite meaning of a word. So for example, hot and cold, open and closed. Using these allows you to vary your language a little bit, so you're not just repeating the same thing again and again. And that's the same for different word forms as well. We have cultures and cultural. Cultural being the adjective form, cultures being the noun form. If we just repeat cultures all the time, it gets a little bit boring. In the same way, we try to use personal pronouns like he or she being the subject pronoun and him being the object pronoun in this case. Again, this is all to knit everything together and try to avoid repetition. Now, sometimes repetition can be useful. We can actually use it to emphasize a point. In this case, why do some people fall in love? Why do some couples ease into marriage? So this is when we want to really hammer home a point. Okay, we can use repetition to bring the reader's attention to the importance of that point. Let's look at some more. So again, try to match the examples on the left to the terms on the right. The first one we can see is an example of just using synonyms: working hard, diligently, motivating, inspiring. These are synonyms of each other. They have very similar meanings but are different words. Again, avoiding repetition. The next one, this is an example of a demonstrative adjective plus a noun. This is the demonstrative adjective, policy is the noun. Again, the policy has been described in the previous sentence, and we kind of like knit it all together by referring to it as this policy once it has been defined. Moving on down, playing, swimming, eating, camping. These are examples of parallel construction, and these can add cohesion to your paragraphs as well. Lastly, we have a demonstrative pronoun, which is that. Again, that. This is something closer. That is something a little bit further away. And we can use these even without the noun afterwards. So, in the latter drafts of your paper, you should be looking through the vocabulary that you've used and replacing them with demonstrative pronouns, demonstrative adjectives, synonyms, antonyms, and so on. It's a really good way. Try to find some examples of cohesive devices in this short piece of writing. As we can see, personal pronouns are used. Misha is firstly the name, and then we have he, and then we have him. Okay, so once we've established what the subject is, we can use pronouns afterwards to vary our language. Articles as well. A law, the first time when it's introduced, and the law afterwards. And demonstrative adjective plus noun, complaints, and these complaints. Okay, so again, adding these in can lend cohesion to your writing. It's a really good idea to do so. Let's look at the articles that we have looked at, and we can try to find examples of these from the articles. Okay, so the first one is repetition. See from the articles if you can find any examples of repetition. Synonyms, try to find words that mean the same thing but are different. Antonyms as well have the opposite meaning. So search down through those, and I'm going to get you to fill out this sheet and email it to me. Okay, so step 1 is to identify the different cohesive devices. Step 2 will be using them. Okay, try to use them in your writing. They're a good idea. They add to the flow and more sophistication. Good luck.